and we'll get this party started. So right before lunch, we were so very close to finishing this morning's coverage. So what I'd like to do is take about 10 minutes, kind of put a bow on this morning's coverage, and then put you guys into breakout rooms to actually start practicing some of these CSS rules and such that we went over this morning, and get you guys some hands-on time. So we're going to pick up where we left off before lunch, which was we had just finished talking about the fixed positioning property. So let's just get everyone dialed up and back up to speed. I am sending out kind of the afternoon lesson material information box here in Slack. So I have the markdown from this morning. If you have closed that tab, you can click on the box model markdown. And then what we're going to cover after you guys' breakout is the advanced layout markdown file. So we won't worry about that one right now. And then the Cloud9 that I was walking through that you guys were following along is right there as well, the Mark's Cloud9 workspace. So if you click on that, that will get us back up to speed. I haven't touched this since before lunch, so we should be in the same spot that we were prior to lunch. And that's where we're going to pick up. So if you're in your lesson plan, if you want to scroll down, way down toward the bottom, our last positioning value that we wanted to take a look at is absolute positioning. And I put a screenshot of an example there into Slack. So I'll give you guys just a second if you need to kind of get caught up and configured and such. I will go ahead and share my screen. Cool. So let's take a look at absolute positioning. Does someone have a question? Does someone come off mute? Okay. So let's take a look at absolute positioning. Absolute positioning removes a given element from the document entirely. So it's almost like the entire browser window, the entire document just ignores this particular element. It acts like it doesn't even exist. So what we want to do for this example is, if you're following along, let's go into our CSS file and let's manipulate the square one ID, the rules here for our square one, which is the red one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the positioning. Go ahead and change that to absolute. So we'll get rid of relative. We'll change that to absolute. And then let's change our coordinates, our top and let's change this to right. So let's make the top coordinate 0, and then let's put a right of 0. We're going to put this element way on the other side of the page just to really exaggerate what this thing does. So if you change the top and right coordinates, or actually just the right coordinate, so get rid of that left and just make it right, you can get a sense of what absolute does. So now you guys' red box should be all the way on the right-hand corner. And the very right top tip of that box is that coordinate, the top coordinate of 0 and the right coordinate of 0. So this is an example of absolute positioning. And the other thing to notice, it's a little bizarre because the red box is all the way on the other side of the continent over here, other side of the page. But I want you guys to note that when we refresh the page, what actually happened is that the green and the black boxes actually scooted up in the flow. So it's as if that red box doesn't even exist. And so the green and the black boxes just kind of moved up in the hierarchy of the HTML, how it's laid out and such. So again, the key with absolute is that you can absolutely position an element and the surrounding elements just pretend like it isn't there. And that's kind of the key to that type of positioning. And then the final thing I wanted to show you guys, this idea of z-index. So z-index is kind of that fourth dimension. It's the one that gives depth to a web page. And to see an example of that, let's play around with our blue and our green squares. So what I want you guys to do, let's try to add z-index to our, in the lesson it says square 1, but since we just moved red to the other side, let's actually play around with square 3. Let's give square 3 some love here. So if we go into our CSS rule for square 3, let's put a z-index. Z-indexes, they have to be whole numbers. A z-index of 0 is just neutral. It's not doing anything. A negative z-index will move a given element backwards or underneath particular layers. And a positive z-index will bring an element to the top. So what we want to do to play around with this, let's try to make this green box, let's make it come on top of the blue one. Let's make it kind of rise to the surface. So to do that, let's put a z-index of 1 for our green box and refresh. And we're going to need to add a couple of more things here to make this work. So we're going to need to play around with the positioning to really see this play out. And actually, I think it's because we still have position fixed on our square 2, which is the blue one. Let me comment out that rule there. That move that. Give me 1 second. It's hard to make something break on purpose here. So that's relative. Let me undo that. Let's get back.
Beg to differ on that one.
Do I now?
Beg to differ on that one.
You do? Yeah, let's see here. Because sometimes you have to play with several different variables, like the positioning has to match some other property. But right now, the green, because the green doesn't have any position on it, let's do this. I'm going to take off the position on red, because initially I was going to play around with the red one anyway. Now all my stuff, because I put an extra comment there. Save that. Cool, there we go. Okay, so now we have the blue box on top of the red one. Let's make the red one kind of bubble to the surface. So just let me take off the z-index. We'll put it on the red box, and it should render appropriately. Let's check it out. I'm going to give it a z-index of 1, and if I refresh, it's still stuck back there. I'm missing an extra rule here. Let me try this real quick. I'm going to put a negative z-index on my blue box here. There we go. So that's kind of an example. I probably need to tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit more dry. But I think you guys can see the idea. So the blue box I moved to the background. I moved behind some other elements by giving it a negative z-index here. And so that's kind of the idea. And then if I comment out z-index on my blue box, then it goes back to its normal flow, the normal positioning that the browser renders, which is kind of on top and with a fixed positioning there in the top left-hand corner. So that's the idea with z-index. You guys can play around with that if you want, but that's the gist, is that it affects kind of the layers. Like I mentioned before lunch, z-index is really good when you deal with parallax scrolling. It's that idea that you have different elements on the page that move at different rates, and they also have kind of a depth to them. So there's like different layers moving on a page, and z-index is part of that strategy to give that appearance. Cool. So I think that's, let's do a little bit of an exercise real quick, and then we'll put you guys in the breakout rooms. So let's practice what we went over before lunch and just now. And we'll do this together. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shout it out. But let's walk through this. So let's walk through these couple of challenges here. Any questions before we kind of walk through these? Okie dokie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out, well, I see some folks may still be copying some code. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to comment out my divs, and I will move them down to the very bottom here. But I still have a trailing comment there. Let me try it one more time. You know, let me do this. I'll paste this into Slack if you guys need it. Otherwise, feel free to just delete the content from your body and your CSS file, and we'll just do this from scratch. Thanks for that screenshot, Christine. That's awesome. So there's the HTML if you need it. It didn't quite paste with the tabs correctly. And then let me paste in the CSS file if you want this for reference. Cool. All right, so I'm going to blow up this stuff here. And I'll go ahead and just clear out my style.css just so we have kind of a blank canvas here. All right, so let's walk through these exercises. So the first thing we want to do, again, we're loving p tags today. Let's create a p tag with some short random content and then the border, padding, and margin. So we'll go ahead and do that. So just put a little bit of text in here. Then we'll do a solid black border for our p tag. So I'll create a rule. Do like 1px solid black. And we'll do 10px of padding and margin. By the way, here's a quick pop quiz if you guys are following along. Actually, I'll put this into Slack. So what will this property and value do? So let me put this into Slack here. Can someone explain what this is going to do? So if I have a margin of 20px and 40px, can someone explain what's happening with that particular property and value? Yeah, so Jason and Zach are getting on it here. So we have margin top, margin bottom, margin right, margin left. But if you want to accomplish two of those things with one property and value, you can do margin colon and then put one value, which would be the top and the bottom values, space, another value that would represent the left and right values. You can also do something like this. So if I had, so I don't know if we've covered this yet. Can someone explain this one to me? So if I have a margin property with values of 10px, 5px, 4px, and 20px, what will that do for me? Slack says several people are typing. Yeah, awesome. So a couple of you guys are knocking this out. Remember this trouble. Oh, clever. I've never seen that one before. That's awesome. Yeah, so margin, border, padding, all of those rules are written clockwise. So if you want to put 4 different sizing for each of your 4 sides, it goes top, right, bottom, left. So it's clockwise. Very good. Trouble. I have not seen that acronym before. That's cool. Never eat soggy waffles. I'm not sure what that means, but all right, moving along. So we've done step 1. Let's do step 2. So let's add some filler text enough to fill up the screen. So I'm going to put that below the p tag here. And I'm just going to do my handy lorem for now. And I'll save that. And then if we view the page, so we should see something like this. So we have some text within kind of a p tag with some margin, with some border, a black border of 1px, solid, and then some filler or dummy text beneath it. Cool. All right. So for the p tag, let's set the position to relative. Let's set the top to 20px and the left coordinate to 20px as well. So we'll do position relative, and then top 20px and left 20px as well. And we'll refresh. And so now we see that that hello WDI remote p tag, it's kind of like, you know, it's going over the filler text that we put in there, that lorem ipsum. So we see that behavior. Now let's set the p tag's position to absolute. Let's see what that looks like. And if we hit refresh, so you can barely make it out here, but we see our hello WDI remote p tag right there. Why is this behavior happening? So what did we just go over as far as absolute? Can someone describe what happens when we put absolute positioning on an element? For example, our p tag in this example.
It ignores. Oh, Dana, you got it. You got it.
Jinx, it's your turn.
Does it kind of just ignore the other elements and say, you know, this is what it is? Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, as we can see here, so absolute, just the rest of the page ignores it. Just like, hey man, I'm not gonna mess with that element. Let it do its own thing. So that's what happens here. The absolute is going to stay in that position. Everything else just flows around it as if it isn't even there. Cool. And finally, let's put this p tag to fixed position. And remember, fixed position is that really fun one if we want to have a sticky nav, if we want to have a sticky footer, if we want to have some element that we want to maintain position as we scroll up and down a page, for example. Fixed is the way that we can do that. So go ahead and change that p tag position to fixed, and we'll refresh. And it still looks the same, right? We still get that same behavior, but remember to see this thing really in action. What we can do, instead of resizing my browser, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more lorem pieces of content down here. So if you guys want to do that, again, just add some more text so that it goes off the bottom of the screen, which means we'll have to scroll the browser window. So we'll do that, hit refresh, and so now, let me put a background on that too so we can actually see it. So make the background red just to help this thing show up. So we have our hello WDI remote, and so now that that's a fixed element, we can scroll up and down and that'll maintain its integrity. It'll stay in the same spot. I really like fixed positioning. That's really fun. That's good times. Sweet. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So how are you guys doing it out there? Are there any questions about this morning or kind of wrapping up, putting a bow on our positioning talk? Okay, great. Christine, if you're out there, I'm not sure if I'm host, but would you mind terribly creating some breakout rooms, maybe like 3 people each, and I will walk through a little bit of a lab time. We didn't get to this morning, so I wanted to give you guys a little bit of time before our official lab time to hack around on this stuff while it's still fresh. So I'm going to put in to Slack. This is kind of, we'll maybe spend 25, 30 minutes, like a little breakout time on this. And this is our little exercise fun times right here. So if you guys want to go ahead and click on that page. And I'll go ahead and share my screen and kind of walk you guys through this real quick. And then we'll put you guys in a breakout room so you guys can play around with this. So I'm sharing my screen. So this exercise is called Windy Bite, which is kind of a play on words. And let me show you what the finished version, what you guys are going to be building. So I'm going to give you some HTML, some scaffolding, some dummy text, and then pretty much you guys just need to worry about the CSS. And so you want to use CSS to take a stab at laying out the HTML in a fashion that looks like this Windy Bite resume page. So if we go back to the repo proper here, if you guys do a pull upstream master, I put this in there like last night, so you should have, it should be local already for you guys. But we have the index.html here. And if you click on that, so this is just some basic scaffolding. You shouldn't have to touch the index.html. Actually, I take that back. You'll probably want to add a little bit of text in here, and I'll give you the text so you can kind of flesh this out. But there's the index.html. Here are the images and such. And those are already baked into the index.html. Here's some additional text. So for the About Me page, if you get that far, here's some text for that. The resume page, here's some, if you get that far, here's some kind of line items for resume if you want to build that out. And then the styles.css, as you can see, it's just an empty CSS style sheet. So this is where you'll want to put your rules. And so the goal here is just have fun with it. Just see if you can recreate this website right here, just using CSS. Now, I'll go ahead and keep sharing my screen. I have a question for you guys. So if you get stuck, and if you get stuck on a style rule, or how did they do that? What is a strategy that we used earlier today where you could investigate what's going on CSS-wise in this web page? How could I check that out? Jason's got it going on. So Google Console, absolutely. So if you get stuck, you can go into your DevTools. This is a pretty simple page, so it shouldn't be difficult to find. And actually, if you go to the Sources tab, there's not a lot going on here. It's just some HTML and CSS for the most part. But here are all the rules and such if you get stuck. I will give you a little bit of a hint. After this exercise, we're going to talk about some advanced styling techniques, one of them being float. So we haven't talked about that this morning. We'll talk about it this afternoon. But you may want to go ahead and take a look at the float property to accomplish some of what you see in the page. So you may want to go ahead and take a look. And we'll talk about that after this exercise time. I'm going to stop my share. Cool. So any questions about this? So we'll put maybe 3 folks into rooms. Want you guys to work on this individually, but obviously if you guys want to help each other, absolutely feel free. But just taking a stab at some of the CSS rules that we talked about, some of the properties and such. Any questions? All right, cool. Thanks, Christine. You may have already hit the breakout rooms, but yeah, we'll see you guys in maybe 20, 25 minutes. I'll ping you guys in Slack when we're ready to reconvene.
Sorry, I didn't think they'd join already. They're like, bye.
No, that's cool. Yeah, let's talk in. Let's just get to building some stuff.
Yeah, they're like, let's do this.